Good early morning, where my guest, Chris Donald, is in Thailand. This is Dr. Matthew Dunn, host of The Future of Email. My guest, Chris Donald from InboxArmy / the Inbox Group. Hey, Chris, finally we get to do this live. Welcome.
Yeah. We talk a lot, but we don't get to do something like this. So that's
Yeah, we get to do it. We get to talk in public. Yeehaw.
yeah.
Give people a capsule version of InboxArmy and Inbox Group as it stands now.
Yeah. So Inbox Group came first. We started that in 2008, and Inbox Army grew out of that when we tried. So Inbox Group worked with a lot of bigger brands and some mid-sized companies, and we found that a lot of our marketing was bringing in a lot more sort of upper small business and a lot of mid-market. And, we turned away a lot of that business. And I'm like, when we looked at it, we're like 75% of the leads of that, right? And so we needed to build a better mousetrap though, to keep costs down, which we did. And once we started Inbox Army in 2016, it just took off. It kind of got crazy with, targeting that sort of upper small mid-market. We still do a lot of work for brands too.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were able to lower costs on the production side, we passed that on even to the brands, right? So it's kind of funny when we would go to some brands and say, hey, we're going to lower costs. And they're like, what? So that was always interesting. But, we've grown incredibly well, did really well through the pandemic years.
Wow.
In 2020, we grew 100%.
Wow. Nice.
And then 2021, we grew almost 70, just over 70%. So it was crazy,
crazy, but yeah, good problem to have. What are the essential divisions of the Army, like key services for customers? How do you have it grouped in divisions?
So most of what we do is we do a huge amount of production work.
Okay.
Right. So if you think of design, coding, testing, setup, deployments, automations, integrations, migrations, that type of work. Right.
Okay.
We're certainly working with data. And we do a fair amount of strategy as well. But, our wheelhouse is the production side.
Okay.
Right. We can generally save most companies just a ton of money doing that. Right. Just because of our cost structure.
That's cost structure, but let's not throw away some pat on the back for expertise. One of the tough lessons to get across to people about email, because we all get it every day, is that it's complicated.
It's hard, right? I love that hashtag. Hashtag email is hard, right? I love that.
Yeah.
Because it is.
It is.
And we see it every day, right? With just mistakes and things people do, especially on the deliverability side, or still people buying lists. Because, there's a lot of people who just don't know how to do things right. They don't know how to set up even the foundation of their email, right?
Mm-hmm.
They read little blips and blobs and best practices, which I hate because, best practices aren't best practices for everyone.
Right.
They're just not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's some silly stuff out there too, right? So, it's hard. It's not like people come out of university or something as an email marketer. They don't, right?
Yeah.
The old saying is email marketers are born of fire, right? Because, it's the office manager that was said, hey, we need you to send emails or the website guy or whatever. They learn by making mistakes, right?
It would intrigue me. I don't know if there's a way to do it, but maybe a poll. I don't know. The set of people who stumble on or listen to this podcast, where I get to talk with people who are deep in the space, I'd be very curious to know how did they come to be interested enough to put an hour into listening to our conversation at some point, because most of the time it seems like an accident where someone fell sideways and like, oh, I guess I'm doing email now. I tripped over that thing, and 5 years later, 10 years later, I'm doing
Yeah,
email.
it'd be interesting to see how people got there as email
Hmm.
marketer. I think there'd be some great stories for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Um, I mean,
But
I got into
it's
it early.
not a curriculum, right? Like you
No,
said.
no, no. I got into it early. I sent my first email marketing campaign in 1995, back when
Good
the internet was
stuff.
low and ugly, right?
Wow.
So, I created keywest.com and floridakeys.com, and we started doing email newsletter.
Right. Okay.
And that was on, I think when we started, it was like, I don't know, 9600 baud modem or something.
Yeah.
Having
And you
Key West, you know, yeah,
got
not exactly.
AOL at that point.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was the You've Got Mail era, right? For sure. Uh, but you could do anything in the 90s and even early 2000s. It was the friggin' Wild West,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could send flash in an email. You could send a form in an email. You could,
Yeah.
it was crazy, right? But I think nowadays it's so I rarely prepare for these things, but for you I did. I actually made a few notes, um, which is something I rarely do because I just you do it so long. You usually have some opinion about everything, right? Whether they're right or wrong or indifferent,
There
you
you go.
tend to. Um, but I was trying to think of if we stay on the topic of future of email,
Mhm.
right? And not that we have to. Although I should say something interesting, something I learned about Southeast Asia and email, right? So email is not very prevalent here.
Mhm.
It is for transactional and to have an account to sign up for things and stuff like that, right? System messages, password resets, certainly receipts from e-commerce, stuff like that. But they are, first of all, they're very social people, right? Very, very social people. I mean, far more than we may think we're social. They take social to a whole nother level. Um, and I think the reason they're not as connected to email is they sort of got into the internet later when the mobile phone became the internet,
Yeah.
right? And that allowed everybody in far off reaches of whatever, even in Thailand, right? So, and because they're very social people, and because Facebook and MySpace back to go and all the social channels were there by then, so that's what they attach to, right? So, and they will put anything on Facebook and other, I mean, stuff that we would never do,
Interesting.
right?
Interesting.
Whether it's personally or to give you an example, when it's their birthday, they post their uh, checking the bank account number on Facebook so people can send them money.
Wow. That's
Wow.
that's different.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Um, so, but email is actually starting to gain a little traction,
Interesting.
right? Um, but social is where it's at for here, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think for the future of email, I think we talk about the machine learning, right? And I think there's validity in that to a point, right? So the question is, will the computers be smart enough to really identify consumer behavior with intent through actions, postings, whatever, by all this data that they can gather? But the problem with that is privacy, right? So the changes we see in privacy and no tracking and all this, machines can only do what they can do, right? Based on the data set they have available.
Mhm.
If you take that away, that slows down the machine learning part of things to a point, right? You can sort of make some assumptions and things, and it's the question is, can we privatize data enough, whether it's through encryption or other type of masking, that the data is available but not visible, almost, right?
Yeah.
Um, that machine learning can actually dig its teeth into.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
that was my that's always been my main fight with the AI part of this is is I think now there's enough data, it's usable, it's and or do we lose our privacy for that? Are we willing to opt in or opt out of privacy, right? Which is a little bit what's happening now, right? Because even on whether the Apple Mail stuff or that stuff, where you opt into, privacy, right?
Right.
But you can word it in a way that, do you want privacy or do you want your data strewn about the world, right? I mean, depends on how you ask the question, right?
Yeah, it depends on how you ask the relatively short question, because no one's going to read the 24 pages of terms of service.
Right.
They're not.
Right. So, there's that, right? Because mobile is such a big part of what we do now, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it is, we're all attached to it, right? And here in Southeast Asia, it's literally, I mean, everybody is on their phone all the time. I mean,
All the time.
do you
Interesting.
think the US is crazy? Here, it's unbelievable.
Is it? I'm just curious. A side question, but from what I know about global markets, it's you get far more predominantly Android devices. Yes.
Yes, although a lot Apple is sort of a status thing, right?
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's definitely a status thing because it's more expensive, but far more people have Android
Yeah.
devices for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. I have the Android Flip, right? Well, you
Okay.
can't see it, but anyway.
Cool.
Oh, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. And I bought it because it's got a bigger screen, and of course I wear glasses, so it's a little easier.
Sure.
But when I have that and I open it up, it's like, oh my God, right? They're like, oh my, wow, you have that? Wow. It's like some big deal, right? No, I bought it for utility more than
Right.
coolness.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's heavy Android for sure. Right.
It's a perception or framing challenge if you work in front of a computer all day, like a real computer. Sorry, smartphones are real computers, right? But if there's a monitor and a keyboard, or in my case, 6 monitors and keyboards, it's like people. This is not how people experience most of it, right? The predominant, communication compute device is in your pocket, not on your
Yeah.
desk. Yeah. Yeah.
No, and it's, I mean, almost 55% of all emails are open on a mobile device,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It is the
Um,
mainstream.
yeah. I mean,
Now,
push notifications, SMS, those are all, I mean, push is a little behind. SMS is a little bit in front of push, I think, because getting people to opt into push is
yeah.
that
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah. Well, to your note about privacy, right? When there's a pop-up that says, "Do you want notification?" General reaction is, "I already have one, thanks."
Yeah.
1,000.
Honestly, I cannot remember a single time I opted into a push,
Yeah.
right? And that might be because of my age too. I don't know, right?
It's a
Um,
factor.
I
Age,
think it's
habits, all.
interesting to look at that. Yeah. Be, because, for most people, uh, you know, uh, I mean, I'm 63. I don't know how old you
Not quite that.
are. Okay. Fair enough. Most people my age are not super technically inclined.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the internet to them was really more of the 2000s and 90s. I adopted early because I I opened a computer and just it made sense to me, right? I don't know why, it just did.
Yeah.
I looked at code, I looked at built websites and did all that stuff. And I did that in my 30s, right? So, but I think most of, internet, if you remember the 90s, most people are, the internet's not going to stay. It's going to go away, right?
It's a fad.
It's a fad, right? Yeah, yeah. It literally, my favorite thing about the internet, I say, is it made the world smaller,
Hmm.
right? Because I know you have friends in other countries now that you never would have had before without the internet, right?
Absolutely.
Me too,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't be working in Thailand if
Right.
it wasn't
Yeah.
the internet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just a different world, or even have, clients in other countries.
Yeah.
It would not have happened that way.
Yeah. Do business with, be part of someone else's, whatever.
Yeah.
Some of our longest running customers, I've never physically met.
No, No,
Wow.
it's the case, right?
Yeah.
In fact, we probably now we're in Texas, right? So um, we have far more companies in other states and in other countries than we do have in Texas.
In the nation of Texas, right?
In the nation of Texas, right? Well, it's funny, when you go someplace and people don't realize really just how big the US is or even how big Texas is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can almost put 3 UKs in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, right? And that's not even the biggest state.
Right. And our friends in Alaska go,
Yeah, exactly.
don't
Yeah, yeah,
bother me with that.
yeah,
You're right. Yeah, there's 6 of you, so don't bother me with that either.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing I see, and I want to see a leap in this, and I'm not sure how we get there, is interactive emails, right? So,
Gotta tell you, I would like to see it as well, but I don't see the technical underpinnings there,
no, it has to be a leap. Yeah,
and it runs smack dab into the privacy issue that you already raised.
right.
Right? Google's been pushing AMP for email, supporting it in their client. Apple, I said this at a recent conference, like Apple won't switch on AMP for email. There's no way they can square that with their privacy stance about something as
Right.
humble as a pixel. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. No, no. And that's a problem is
Right.
there has to be a big shift
Hmm.
one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
And heavy privacy is going to kill a lot of innovation, I think.
Yep.
Um, and the other way will spark innovation, but we're giving up privacy.
Yeah. And we're both Yankees, so our context to some extent is informed by US practice where we're far more likely to sign over privacy for convenience. And
Yeah.
I think it's probably enabled some degree of faster innovation in the markets here. So when someone whines about privacy in the US, I'm like, yeah, did volunteer.
Yeah.
Did sign up for this, right? You knew that. But as we put on some brakes on that, at least to the extent that that ecosystem is powered somewhat by knowing more about customers for advertising, marketing, fill in the blanks, it's going to slow it. I agree with you. I think it's going to slow some of those innovations down. AI and ML need the signal, as you were saying a few minutes ago.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And, apps kind of fix a little bit of that problem, right? But
a little bit.
there's that, how many apps can you install, right? So my question, is there eventually, is an app like a mall where there's barely multiple apps in an app or multiple stores in an app, or there's an app for a city or a state or where something, right? That's because the problem I have is I install apps and then I go, man, I've used this app in 6 months, so I'll install it, right?
Right, which makes you statistically typical, right? It's like
Right.
average app gets used about 1.5 times.
Right. And then, yeah, there's only a few, and even like apps like Lyft or Uber or whatever, I use them when I travel, like,
Right.
occasionally, but not all the time.
Right.
And that's always when I talk about apps. If you cannot keep them engaged for that first 30 days where they use it, then the chances of them never opening it again are extremely high.
Yeah, they're pretty. Yeah,
I mean,
pretty
numbers, mind numbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because it's one of the affordances of the smartphone as it evolves. Like you can make this into a Swiss Army knife and buy as many blades as you want, but which one do you reach for habitually? Which one becomes like sticky for your own uses? And there aren't many of those. Email, I believe email is still one of the top X 2, 3, 4 open apps on mobile devices.
It's the original killer app.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I mean, how many times over the years RSS is going to kill it, or this is going to kill it, or that. It's like a zombie. You can't kill it, right? And it's so integrated into the internet experience.
Yeah.
To get the logins and registers and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think because the apps that are most used are social apps, right? Or what I call the look at me, bitch and moan apps, right? Which is because that's really what most of what's done on it, right?
Yeah.
Either they're complaining or they're
Yeah.
um, and I guess it makes sense. TikTok obviously it's grown incredibly. And what's really interesting is the average age of the user on TikTok has gone way up,
Is it? Yeah.
way, way up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It'll follow a curve. It'll be very interesting to see 5 years from now.
yeah, 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 yeah.
What's the age? What's the viewership? What's the participant?
Well, something else is going to come to make things easier, to make more live. They already have live on there, but I think that is part of,
Hmm.
it's that instant gratification thing, right? Um, but I still look at email as it's still about how do we put better tools and features into the hands of the user, right? Whether it's to use data, whether it's the ESP, the CDPs, CRMs, whatever you want to call it, all the stupid acronyms we love to use, um, and use data better and actually give users value, right? That's always been my take is when you send an email or any type of messaging, it should have value for the person who receives it as well as the company sending it,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because if it's why I tell, B2B clients, oh, look, we put out this email that we won an award or we did this or we closed all this business. You know what? They don't give a rat's ass about that. They just don't, right? Give them something of value, give them some knowledge, give them something that
Yeah.
will make them open the next email. Um,
Right.
in e-commerce right now with recession and all that, it's all about deals right now, right? You know, Amazon having the second Amazon
Prime
Day,
Day.
right?
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah.
Well, because you know people aren't buying a lot,
Hmm.
so the non-essential stuff has gone down.
Yeah.
Walmart had big discounts on electronics and home goods and other stuff. Their food and their essentials were fine, but um, they were just way overstocked. Um, and then they canceled like billions of dollars of orders,
Oh, really? Interesting.
which was eye opening, right? So that's what I always look at Amazon, Walmart, those guys, you know, because they have a lot more data, a lot more information than
Yeah.
we'll ever.
Yeah.
And it's the early and often sales right now, right? So I tell people you need to start. If you're e-commerce, you need to start your stuff now, right? Do an early Black Friday. Hey, the same deal we're offering on Black Friday, we're offering you today because you're a value subscriber or whatever, right? Uh, because I think there's going to be a lot more buying from week to week, paycheck to paycheck as we get to the holidays. And I think people aren't going to necessarily hang their hat on Black Friday, Cyber Monday as much because of that. I could be wrong, right?
Yeah.
But
It does
that's
seem
sort of
like
what I'm seeing other guys do. So,
yeah, and you've got the big dogs like you mentioned, Amazon Prime Day, like stealing some of the sense of
thunder.
urgency out
Yep.
of that, spreading it out a bit more. I'm
Yep.
curious since you mentioned Amazon, I'm curious about your reaction to the news that broke last week about Amazon essentially saying if you're an Amazon merchant, if you sell through us, guess what? You were within some controls, you can start emailing other people through Amazon. Like they kind of gone into the quasi ESP with
Well,
the ridiculously huge list of folks who are Amazon.
yeah. And I almost think, I was waiting for that to happen, obviously,
Yeah.
right? So because if you sell on Amazon, you don't get that data, right?
Right.
Um, but I think maybe what Amazon is seeing is that the company is better at addressing the consumer than they are for all the different products,
Right.
right? So they can't be contact people. They can send a picture, hey, yeah, you looked at this or you bought this before, or, all that crap, right? Um, but, relationship building, that's not there. They can't do that, right? Um, they can't give that information out. They don't know when new products are being released.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they're probably seeing the value in giving that ability, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, at least I think so. Uh,
It intrigued me that Amazon expanding the email reach for their merchants came within a week or two of Shopify putting $100 million investment into Klaviyo, which is
yeah,
the dominant ESP email platform for Shopify
Shopify.
merchants who very similar pattern going on in those two big competitors, Shopify, Amazon, I would argue.
Yeah, it's interesting because Klaviyo is a great little platform, right? I mean, it's not a little platform anymore. You know, uh,
Chris Marriott calls it cheap and cheerful.
yeah, it is. It's inexpensive. It's a month to month play. I used to call it Mailchimp on steroids, right? Um, but they're going in a different very. I believe they've launched their sort of enterprise version, right? Which is Klaviyo 1. If not, it's coming soon, I think.
Interesting.
But, part of what made Klaviyo grow so quickly there was when MailChimp and Shopify had that little fight, right? About
Yes.
security or API or something,
Yes.
right? And so MailChimp cut them off, right? Or Shopify, one of the other. They couldn't
That was quite a sort of an epoch event.
It made no sense, right? I mean, how did we just not get there? Because it didn't help either one. It just hurt them both, right?
Made a heck
And
of
so,
an opening for Klaviyo, though, as you said.
yeah, all those MailChimp users really just gravitated over it, right? And it gave them a huge boost.
I just looked up Klaviyo 1. It is on the market. Klaviyo.com/ONE. But here's the logline pitch. Finally, a unified customer platform that delivers personalization at scale, and it's email and SMS.
Yeah, and I think they have push as well.
Probably,
I think, if
yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
But it
But
doesn't
yeah,
surprise me to see SMS in the list.
right.
But boy, talk about aspiration. We're a CDP. We're a personalization platform. We're an email platform. We're a texting platform.
Platform.
That's a few
Yeah,
things
no.
to do.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, they
Sure.
do it relatively well,
Yeah,
right?
that's good to hear.
You know, because we run into all kinds of clients, and sometimes we see clients that were sold an ESP that they just don't need,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying anything bad about any of them, but because God bless them, their salespeople are really good, right?
It's a fit thing.
Yeah, it's a fit thing, but it's also a cost problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only because, somebody buys, Salesforce or Marketo, usually it's the marketing manager or somebody else who makes the purchase and then hands it off to these poor people that have to run it. They have no friggin' clue, right? Because, both of those platforms are great platforms, but they're difficult to use, right? It'll take you, 10 more steps to do things than it might do in, say, a Klaviyo or some of the others, right? It's a man hour problem,
Right.
right? So they say, oh, the platform costs this. So, no, the platform costs 10 times that because the man hours you're using. And then, of course, the people can't get there. So, and I said, I should explain, they call people like us or consultants or,
Yeah.
And I always say bad decisions on buying ESPs drive business for us. Unfortunately, right? It's true for most agencies. It drives business.
Yeah.
But it needs to be easier, and they really need to educate, maybe on the front end or I guess an ESP's job isn't to educate. It is to a point, I think, and they do try. Um, but there are still far too many ESPs that say yes to purchase data, right? Purchase
Well,
list.
yeah, and the first part of that sentence was also true. There are still far too many ESPs. I
Period. No, right, right.
it's 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 a little it's a little bit unusual to see a space that doesn't have a dominant player, but that's absolutely true of the platform side of email. There are
No.
hundreds, and you
Oh,
can't go,
yeah.
yeah, those guys own most of the market. There is no those guys. And
No.
it numerically was MailChimp, but small to medium business, now owned by Intuit. So I would not argue that they're 800-pound chimpanzee or anything like that.
Gorilla, whatever. Well, I think that was a smart move for Intuit, right?
Yeah, me too.
They were integrated already. They're probably going to integrate better.
Yeah.
Intuit had what 6-7 million small business users, and MailChimp had 11 million. So yeah, that made sense, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Huge overlap.
yeah. I mean, I think that was the main thought behind it. And then shortly after they bought it, they reintegrated with Shopify.
Right. Little detente, new ownership, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was also, to me, that acquisition of MailChimp by Intuit was another big email ain't going away flag being waved, because Intuit, if you look at their history and track record, like they go in sectors where it's going to stick around, right? QuickBooks
Yeah.
is how old at this point?
Oh,
Yeah.
my God. Right? Yeah. And adoption everywhere, right? It's not just US adoption.
Yeah.
It's everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
It's everywhere.
It is pervasive. No, it makes sense, right? But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for email is to continue with innovation wherever we can. But I think the privacy issue is going to be the problem. I really do. I think that's going to be the disruptor in all of this. Is eventually it's either going to go one way or the other.
Well, one of the puzzles there, that let's call it privacy versus personalization and innovation, but that those two things bumping up against each other. I'm looking at the Klaviyo One screen that you prompted me to open. They've got a whole story about personalization told visually on the homepage, but it's absolutely predicated on data about Kara Garland, their prototypical person, right? Subscriber.
Yeah.
Like, more data they've got about Kara, the more they can personalize her email. Fair equation. But what if Kara says, I don't want to say everything about me. I just want to buy stuff when I feel like it and tell you nothing. You're like, oh, dang, those two things, they don't work very well together. If Klaviyo One has nothing about subscriber X, personalization, at least in its current paradigm, not going to be much of it.
Oh. Yeah. No, that's the wild part in all.
Yeah.
Because I love the idea that we can use data better. I love the idea that a lot of the platforms make it easier to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's creating dynamic segments or triggers or whatever it is you want to call it.
Yeah.
And one of my pet peeves, by the way, so I'd like to get this out of the way, is an email. We love to give the same thing like 92 names. Yeah. I mean, automations. I mean, we've got flows, we've got journeys, we've got triggers, we've got grips, we've got, I mean, and it's funny. Somebody will call and say, all right, I want you to create a drip for us. I said, yeah, we can do the automation. I don't want an automation. I want a drip. Okay. I can do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but we do it to ourselves. Right. And the acronym stuff is, the acronyms are detrimental to the conversation.
Yeah. Though it's not just this particular space.
No, it's everything,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's everything. We
Right.
love to put them on, right?
Talk to a school teacher and listen to the acronym salad that a public school teacher rattle off, and it's like, what are you talking about? The world's becoming the complexity going up, specialization branching off, and
Yeah.
we end up making up these short terms. Chris Marriott, who I mentioned, mutual acquaintance of ours,
Mhm.
made, I thought, a brilliant long-term call about the customer data platform and the email service provider headed the same direction. But when you go blah, 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 ESP, CDP, like 99 people in the room go, no idea what you just said.
No, yeah,
No
exactly.
idea.
Right. And CDPs exist because ESPs didn't do a good job with data,
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree.
right?
Yeah.
Simple as that. It's
Yeah.
really, and it was funny because it was the ESP saying big data. Well, you know what? We suck at small data. Why don't we get that fixed first?
Yeah.
But
Really.
but the CDPs, that's why they exist, right? Is the ESPs didn't do a good job.
Well, it's part that, and it's part of a bunch of things. I think the technical model of a lot of the email platforms on the market is kind of antiquated. It's like import a list to do this, import a list to do that. Like timeout. I got the same guy on both lists, and I don't have any way of seeing the connection between those two things. That's why the CDP exists,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it's hard to re-engineer that stuff, especially when you've got an installed base who likes a list or figured out how to manage it. So
Well, and the CDPs are morphing into ESPs as
yes, they
well.
are. Yeah,
That
yeah,
they're putting those abilities into the platform.
yeah.
Right?
Bolt the cloud MTA on the
Yep.
side, and oh look, you're almost there. And then the sort of API level consolidators, Twilio obviously comes to mind. Like
Right.
they're getting all of the pieces lined up and assembled. It just isn't called a platform.
Right.
But could you make it one? Not that much work, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
MessageBird / Spark Post headed the
Hmm.
same way, perhaps. Yeah. How does that technical mess factor for your business? I would think
It,
being on top of it puts you in a good position.
it does. It helps us a bit, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in any given month, we have clients on over 40 to 50 platforms,
Wow.
if you
Wow.
can imagine, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're platforms or CDPs or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, it might be the problem, a lot of times we see companies that have, they'll have like attentive for their SMS, and then they have their ESP, and then they have, something for social, and they have all these things integrated, right? Through APIs, whatever. And it's like the old day with all the old phone cords running around, whatever, right? It's kind of like, it's just looking to break, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the more connections you have, the more chances you have to break, which is why I think the holistic platforms, if somebody can get there, make them usable without it looking painful and hard and
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
If somebody can get there, I mean, look, you have Salesforce closing down the social studio, right? Part of that. Different things just weren't enough to make it work. And I love Salesforce, great platform, but it's difficult,
Yeah.
right?
It's difficult. That's
I always my description with Salesforce is they built, or ExactTarget built, a really nice house with 50 bedrooms, right? And really good. And then they came along and put on 2,000 additions, and now you can't get from the here to there, going outside through a tunnel and up.
Where's the kitchen, man?
It was a little like that. I mean, maybe I'm not being fair to them. I love
and
Salesforce, so
and
yeah,
strive to serve very different markets and very different sizes of companies, which Salesforce has done successfully. It's
yeah,
is a daunting job. I would argue HubSpot's going down that same road. I've watched HubSpot grow
yep,
from wow, killer sleek CRM to this is Frankenstein's monster, man. I'm like,
yeah. No, same thing. And
ah,
that's the problem, because it's never done holistically. It's done as, let's put this on him.
Yeah.
It's a Frankenstein, right? Uh,
Which is kind of nature of
well,
evolution
just
of digital
to
artifacts.
speed to market. It's a speed to market problem, right?
And squeaky wheel, and
Yeah.
what do we think is going to help us close the quarter, and that kind of stuff. I'm backtracking in my head a little bit in the conversation, but when I was early on in college, I got a summer job at a motel. This is in a tourist town, and they had a switchboard for the phones in the room. Remember, we had phones in the room, and it was an actual patch cord switchboard, right? Someone in the room would call, it
Oh,
would buzz.
yep.
We'd go, "Oh, you want an outside line? Hang on a second," and plug the cord in. And like, I didn't realize it was training for the tech space with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
works.
It is. It is. Um, well, remember we used to have well, went all the way back to the 70s. We had the full acoustic couplers to connect
Yep.
to
Yep.
mainframe, right?
Yep.
And stuff like that.
Yep. Yep.
But even then, even with modems, you'd be online and it would go offline because somebody picked up the phone and tried to make a call, right? There
Yeah.
was that problem because you had to tie up the phone line to be on.
The phone line. Well, part of that leapfrog that's led to behavioral differences that you talked about at the beginning about Thailand, where you are now, is I think Thailand's one of the countries where the wired telephone infrastructure didn't necessarily go everywhere, so they leapfrogged and said
Absolutely.
wireless everywhere because it's a lot cheaper than string and barbed wire, a lot faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Right. No doubt about it. It moved them quickly as well. So they adapt incredibly well to technology.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
Surprisingly so. Right. But yeah, the social drive of it is, there's a lot of things about Southeast Asia that I love. Food, people, things, the way they do things. Don't get me wrong. I love America. It's my home, right? Don't get me wrong. But it is, I don't know if they'll ever get away from the social driven part, right? I see email making a little hay, right? And it's certainly used in business to a point. But app they pay for everything a lot of times with their phone, with their bank app.
Interesting. Is there a predominant app or series of apps used for payment?
Well, they're your bank app, right? So
Oh, okay. Interesting.
everybody like all these little street vendors, they have a little QR code. So if you buy something, you put it in, they tell you it's 650 baht or 10 baht or 20 baht or whatever it is. You put it in, you send it to them, you show the thing, and they go, okay, take your food, right?
Wow.
And it's done like that all over. And these are just little shops, little markets, street vendors.
Yeah.
Street food in Southeast Asia is amazing, right?
Nice.
So it's just the way they do it. They send money to each other. That's why all you need is the account number, right? That's why they post it on Facebook. If you have the account number in the bank, you can just send them money, right?
Interesting. Where by contrast, paying with the smartphone in the U.S. is still relatively unusual. I use my wife has the Apple Card in her pocket, so I use the phone, and it's still hit or miss to say.
Yeah, it is. You don't see it. Sometimes you see it in places.
Sometimes not. Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't even work well either. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
I mean, even though, the smart cards, we should be able to just put it down. You put it down, doesn't read it. You still got to put it in. Right.
Right. Which is another one of those leapfrog innovation cycle things. The credit card itself was invented, first came into functional use in the U.S. It was Seafirst Bank in Seattle that actually started the thing that we now call the credit card. So we stuck with swipes and then mag stripes for a lot longer than other countries that went to chips or cards earlier.
Absolutely, we did. Right. Yeah. Yeah. We push ahead on some things and we fall behind on it.
And we fall behind. Yeah, we fall behind badly on others. Kenya has a SMS-based payment system called M-Pesa, I think, M-Pesa, like astonishing move money all over the place, and it's SMS based, but it practically runs the economy there. It's like you don't have to have terabyte bandwidth and a zillion apps to make this work. You have to have, trust and some institutional stability and sort of
Right.
build a habit at a national level to make something stick. And then
Yeah.
changing it hard.
Right. Right.
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because these countries are more apt to make that leap and make those decisions, there isn't as much bureaucracy to stop that. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's why sometimes they adapt or adopt very quickly, right? Adopt and adapt,
Adopted.
a little faster,
Yeah.
right?
You said it, I'm just plucking it out. The culture of a place is an underlying factor that very much influences what sticks, what doesn't, how it evolves in actual use. You're in a nation where highly social people. It's not going to change. Like
Yep.
technology will have to fit or it won't get adopted, I suspect.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And U.S. different, less social, if that's a single axis that we can describe, less social in a way,
Yep.
more capitalist in a way. So we'll adopt things that suit that culture to some extent.
No doubt.
What's
Yeah.
the other big surprise about living there?
Um, some things that I don't see here are interesting. So, and I think this is a family centered thing. There are no old folks homes. There are no retirement villages. People stay with their families.
Grandma's with family.
Yep.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Food eating is a social event for the most part, right? It's friends and family all the time,
All the time. No.
all the time. Yeah. Um, and the street food thing is a big deal for me because they are fanatics about clean and safety. And, you- I've eaten more street food here than you can shake a stick at, not got sick once, right? Always delicious, always inexpensive. The exchange rate here right now is really great, right? I mean, it's like 37, almost $38 a baht to a dollar. And things are inexpensive here anyway,
Wow.
just just cost wise, right? I can have a full American breakfast with bacon, eggs, hash browns, toast. They always have a little salad on the plate for some reason. Anyway, uh, and it cost me like, 100 baht or 120 baht, which is, well, a dollar is
Yeah. Three bucks.
30 baht,
4
baht. Yeah, 3-4 bucks with a drink, right? So,
bucks.
yeah,
I lived in France for 6 months. Family and I lived in France for 6 months, where they don't eat American style breakfast. I get it; it's a cultural difference. But
well, here they don't
we were
eat.
at the door of the diner, going, "Let us in. Where's the bacon?" When we got back.
Yeah, I've had rice soup with pork
Yeah.
for breakfast because
Yeah.
that's one of their deals. They have fish and they eat chicken for breakfast. I mean, they just it's not. It's just a meal. It's not. And I have a friend here says, well, he's from way northwest or east, Thailand. And there's two things he said of it. He says, if it's not hot, it's not good. And if there's not rice, it's not food.
There you go.
So he'll say, because I'll say, hey man, you just ate. No, I didn't have rice. I didn't just eat. I'm like, man. But yeah, and the other thing here is all the vegetables, fruit, and everything are just so much tastier. There's so much more flavor in them. Now some of them are smaller because probably not GMO to death, right? But yeah, the flavors in their fruits and their vegetables here are, I imagine this is what they were supposed to taste like before
Right.
whatever happened to them, right? Um, but yeah, and a lot of the country, a large part of the country that way out in the country is they literally live off the land, right? They usually have communal rice fields that they all work and all work together to grow the rice. And then some raise chickens, some raise cows or pigs and they eat everything. I mean, everything.
So out working the communal rice field, smartphone in every pocket, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something that was really funny. So one of my first trips here, um, I was with a client and they said, "Hey, you want to go out to lunch?" I said, "Sure." And he said, there's like a small little mall over here. We'll go over here because they have a bunch of food places and you can pick something that you like. Right. I'm like, okay. It being nice to me because everything's here spicy, right? A lot of it is. So we walk in and I look around, I'm like, oh, and I said, "How about Kentucky Fried Chicken?" And he says, "I don't think we have that." And I said, "Yeah, it's right over there." He looks, he says, "Where?" I says, "Right there, KFC." And he says, "KFC is Kentucky Fried Chicken?"
Interesting.
Because it does not say Kentucky Fried Chicken anywhere.
Right.
Well,
Right.
first of all, Kentucky Fried would mean anything.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Um, so he was like, "Wait till I tell people." Nobody knew, right? He thought that was just like the
Yeah.
coolest
Yeah.
thing, right? But interestingly, Swenson's is here. I don't know if you've ever heard of Swenson's ice cream place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sizzler Steakhouse,
Wow.
which, pretty much died in the West, as far as I know. I think maybe this
Yeah.
is even the Midwest somewhere. Because I was joking. I said, maybe this is where brands go to die or after they die. This is heaven for brands or something, right? Because it's all, they have Dairy Queen and Burger King and all the, everything, right? But
Interesting.
different. Like Burger King has, you can choose pork patties or beef patties.
Hmm.
A lot of spicy options. Almost all the hamburger place sells fried chicken as well.
You got me
It's just,
sold on the street food. I think I'd skip all of the chains. Thanks.
oh yeah, no, I haven't been to a fast food place. I have making a ride up to Bangkok, and so I had the driver stop just to get a quick egg McMuffin so we could just go fast. And I think that was the last time I had one.
Yeah.
I don't know, about a
Yeah.
month ago. But yeah, no, it's that, and I do cook here and stuff. So,
Ooh, okay.
but it's so inexpensive. It's easier just to go out. Really
Sure.
is.
Well, wow. Wow. What a, Hey, so you're sitting in Thailand, which is not email centric, guiding this global organization that does email stuff for customers all over the place. Like you're a human juxtaposition. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And again, the internet makes it possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You have all the digital nomads. I see them here all the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right?
I'm sure. Well,
Yeah.
the fact that I'm blown away by how seamless this video conversation is. We haven't had lags, dropouts, stutters. Like it's fine.
No, no.
Wow.
I have I have fiber here.
Do you? Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm in an area, so I'm in Wah Hin. Some call it Hua Hin. Thais tend to call it Wahin. Wahin. Um, it's so it's 3 hours south of Bangkok. It's a city, but it's not like a tourists come here, but not like, you know, Phuket or Bangkok or even Chiang Mai or Pattaya, some of the Koh Samui that are big draws, right? A lot of expats live here. So a lot of expats in, US, Europe, uh, you know, come here to retire
Interesting.
because their dollar goes farther, right? Um,
And you said digital nomads there as well?
yeah, lots of digital, not as many. I mean, in Wuhan, I see them on a regular basis, but if you go to Bangkok or Phuket, they're all over.
Yeah.
They're in all the coffee shops and
In the coffee shops.
they go use the free Wi-Fi, right? Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. The backpackers certainly, but the digital nomads it's a thing. It's a bigger thing than even people understand, right?
Well, it was already starting to happen, but then you throw the, pandemic and the shift in remote work permissibility and
Right.
habits and infrastructure, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's like go. If I were
Right.
20 something, I'd be like, see ya, got a laptop in the backpack. See ya. Why
Yeah. Yeah. When people are saying all these people, oh, they're quitting their jobs and they don't want to work. Well, no, they actually became consultants and freelancers and all those type of things because they realized during the pandemic they could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Do you have any remote, like, nomad folks as part of the inbox team?
um, not really.
Okay.
We have some, but not a ton. I mean,
Yeah.
we probably have maybe 3 or 4,
Okay.
which is really low percentage. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I'm sort of, you know, and the nice thing about being here, like next month, I'm going to go to Singapore for a week, right?
Yeah.
Just go check out Singapore. I'll make a trip to Cambodia and to Vietnam because they're quick trip. I mean, it's like I can go to Vietnam for like $60 or $100 round trip, right? I mean,
And it's not that many hours away.
no, it's an hour and 15-minute flight or something, right?
Yeah. Back
Oh,
to what you said about one of the shifts about the US, and not the only country like this, but certainly one of them, like, wow, it's a big sucker, right? I
yeah,
I tell people the county I live in, I live in Washington State, and I said the county I'm in is bigger than the state of Delaware. Just the county.
right. Just a county.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
Howard.
and that's the thing, like Europe, right? The nice thing about Europe is you can visit all those countries pretty easily,
Yeah,
right?
they're
Um,
relatively compact, relatively
yeah, yeah.
close together.
And it's so you can see all these different countries. We are while we're big, we're relatively isolated. We have Canada and Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, those are our only neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. And a
Right?
long ways away from most parts of the States.
Yes, yes. That and Americans don't travel internationally enough.
No.
Most don't even have a passport.
Yeah. Well, I see Canada, literally, I see Canada out that window. And
Mm.
so British Columbia, which is beautiful, is really close. People going from here to there, astonishingly small number. It's not it's like, look, if you're in Seattle, BC is 2 hours away. Oh, we
Yeah,
can get around to it, right? It's like, yeah, it's not, so kind of not in the habit, not part of the culture. Back to that word.
right. Yeah, it's the same thing. If you live in Maine and to make
Yeah.
a trip to Nova Scotia or Montreal,
Yeah.
and they don't, right?
Yeah. We
Yeah,
do. Yeah. It's just,
yeah, no, I don't know why. Yeah, and the other thing is, in the U.S. And again, I'm not beating up on the U.S. Please don't think I am. We have this English only issue, right?
yeah.
Whereas in every other country I've been to, everybody speaks multiple languages
Yeah.
always,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Uh,
That's a real, a real shortcoming. And I don't think it'll necessarily change, although Spanish is becoming more and
yeah,
more a viable second language, at least in some
yeah,
parts of the US. But
yeah. Because part of it is there's not been a need.
yeah, yeah,
When you're a smaller country bordered by a lot of other smaller countries, there's a lot more interaction, so there's a lot more learning that happens. Um, and I think that probably hurts America a bit in
yes,
that understanding other cultures,
yes,
right?
agreed. Yeah.
Because we don't understand other cultures. Well, hold on, I got to check my calendar. Oh, yep, I got a sales call. Got to run
Let's let's wrap. See,
already.
I knew we'd
Yeah,
go all over the place. Well, it was wonderful, wonderful
yeah,
talking to
I
you.
enjoyed it.
Listen to
I enjoyed
stories
it.
there.
Great,
Yeah, yeah.
great call.
I'll tell the tale maybe in the show notes about how instrumental you were and how kind you were in helping Campaign Genius start into this space. So,
Oh, no problem. No problem. I don't know that I did a lot, but
you did.
anything I did help you. That's good.
Awesome. Well, my guest all the way from Thailand has been Chris Donald of InboxArmy. Chris, thanks so much for making the time.
My pleasure, buddy. You have a great day.
You too.